We're here with Ian Anderson on Visual Radio. Hello, Ian.
Hello there.
Hey, it's great to speak with you. You know, back in the 70s when British bands were breaking into America, there were a lot of parallel imports coming in. And the Tull albums, Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, they were piled up in the Harvard Square and Central Square, Cambridge, and Discount Records and New England Music City, and they would fly out of the stores. People would be the first in America to have them. It was quite a buzz. And Tull had the buzz in my high school. It was very hip to have gone and seen Jethro Tull. I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, that's very nice of you to share that with me. And what was hip back when you were in high school is probably, I don't know, a curse from the past today. If you're a young man or lady growing up in North America and you're having to suffer the endless blue comfort blanket of classic rock that makes your parents happy and sleep well at night, then it could be a curse today, couldn't it? Who knows?
Well, my concern is that today the kids don't understand that thrill of going and finding a record before it comes out in America the week before, you know, and being able to play it. And, you know, when you have a great new record today, it's a lot different from those days, I feel.
Yes, it is. And I think there's a different way of reaching out these days, and I certainly take advantage of it, which is that when I find an interest in a particular artist or a particular piece of record product or a new song, then I go along and buy it on iTunes or whatever, and it is an enormously accessible world of music these days, of all kinds of music, from classical music to jazz and pop and rock and world music. It's all out there, and it's relatively easy to find. And I think perhaps the fact that it is so easy makes it less of a challenge and maybe ultimately perhaps less rewarding, but nonetheless I think I would trade off that sense of achievement that I might have had finding a particular record in some hard-to-reach record store in some suburb of a big town somewhere. I would trade that off any time for being able to sit in my own home and access the world of music and buy what I choose to buy without having to get in a motor car and burn up a lot of gasoline to get to a record store. So yeah, I think on balance I prefer things the way they are now, really.
Oh, that's amazing, because I walked into a wholesale club here in Boston, and they had DVDs, so you can get, you know, Living with the Past by Jethro Tull, but they don't have CDs anymore, and it stunned me. It's stunning.
Well, it is indeed, and of course there are very few these days, very few record stores as we know them that are still around, and in a lot of cases, if you want to buy a physical product, you've got to buy it from a mail order source, you know, like an Amazon or whatever it is, and wait for 2 or 3 days for it to arrive through your letterbox. But that's the changing world we live in, and I personally, you know, I prefer the convenience of having music audio files, which I can access anytime, including the whole vast Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson repertoire, because when I have to learn a song, as I shall be doing in an hour or two from now, then it's all in one convenient MP3 player, which I'm carrying with me, and it's always there. Everything I need, everything I have, it's there. And CDs, while some people rather like to have them on their living room shelves, to me, they're a bit of a clutter, and I can't really profess a lot of warmth and attraction to the idea of a CD with its rather minuscule little artwork you can hardly read, but nor would I want to have to own vinyl albums and endure the horrible scratchy reality of nastily compressed and limited audio with inner groove distortion and all the problems associated with cutting a vinyl master, which I remember so well from years gone by, was always quite an upsetting and disappointing experience. So yeah, I'm your MP3 guy. I'm an old man, but I live in the modern age, and I utilize all the convenience of digital technology whenever it suits me. And then I'm foul-mouthed about it when it doesn't work. But there you go.
I like my special collector's edition of Aqualung Live on Fuel. Fuel 2000.
All right, yeah.
Is that available on download?
Well, I'm not sure about a collector's version of it, but you can probably find most versions of Aqualung that have been recorded, I would have thought, unless they've been some of those curious little specialist companies who used to do remasters usually with vinyl remasters, which were somewhat questionable in regard to whether they're any better than the originals, but there were a few of those out in years gone by, and maybe some of those have made it into the digital world. I don't know. I'm not a collector. I'm a pragmatic music person. I only have music that I actually really need for a reason, for reference or something I really want to listen to, but I don't really collect things for the sake of collecting them, whether it's music or musical instruments or guns or cameras or watches or anything that I happen to have a few of. I don't actually think of it as collecting. I always think collecting is a bit of an obsession, sort of amassing stuff, and I'm not that keen on stuff. I've got plenty of stuff. I've got all the stuff I need, really, and I think I actually probably do with a bit less stuff. Maybe I should give it to Elton John, and he can have another auction.
There you go. Lou Reed is one of my favorite artists, and one thing about Lou is he's a great essayist, and he doesn't do enough of it for me. When you read an essay from Lou Reed, he really drives the point home. Ian Anderson is a great speaker, and I would love to hear you on a speaker's tour. Do you have any lecture circuit ideas for the future?
Not really. It's something that's sort of come up, I guess. It's been mentioned as a thing to do. But I think my interests are probably more in combining elements of music with something else. And I indeed did that some years ago with the Rubbing Elbows tours that I did in the USA, where we, it was part talk show, part special guest, part regular performance, and that was kind of mixing it up. But as a nightly performance, it was very grueling because of the special guests and the fact we worked with people from local radio and who needed their hands holding sometimes in front of a live audience. So it was actually quite daunting. It was a very demanding, afternoon sound check and rehearsal with guests, and then a more than 2-hour show. So it was at the end of two of those tours. I think I was probably more exhausted than I have been, doing outdoor Jethro Tull shows in the middle of summer in Greece or somewhere, which are exhausting for different reasons.
You brought up collecting. With YouTube now, people can find almost anything just up on YouTube. What do you think of Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson music that's up on the YouTube?
Well, I can't really comment on that because I don't really have a particular reason to go and look at it or listen to it. But what I do find is that what is very useful to me is the fact that if I'm, particularly with other artists, or if I'm looking at someone, perhaps with a view to a guest or a guest artist or band or whatever it might be, then it is useful to get an idea of how they play live and how they work live. And so, when we had a special guest a year or so ago, Anushka Shankar, the daughter of Ravi Shankar, played on a tour in India with us as our guest, and it was a way of getting a little bit to know her playing and the way, just her body language on stage, and get a feel for how she performed. And so it was very useful to be able to find some even pretty grisly quality examples of her performing on YouTube. So I found it quite useful to do.
Ian, who came up with the concept for the 2002, was it, Living with the Past DVD?
Well, it wasn't so much a concept. It was just really the beginning of a period of time, I suppose, when DVDs were beginning to become a meaningful part of entertainment. It wasn't quite at the beginning of the DVD revolution, but to begin with, there were players and not very much to play on them. And so people were clamoring for music DVDs, and I guess movies were not, apart from old movies, were not being released on DVD until years rather than months had gone by, or weeks as it is now. So music DVDs had a run, albeit quite a short one, of a couple of years of doing rather well, and so we released a music DVD of a live concert, which was kind of revisiting some of that older repertoire in a live concert we recorded. Can't remember where we actually recorded. It might have been in London. And then, of course, music DVDs started to tail off in music in actual sales figures because of the the plethora of available material on DVD and recordable DVDs where you could hook it up to your TV and record everything that you wanted. So these days, music DVDs, if you say perhaps if a music DVD sold 100,000 copies, which was a pretty respectable figure in the USA back in 2002 or 2000, by 10 years down the line, that same music DVD would probably sell 10,000 copies. It's simply not a very popular medium anymore, so I'm glad that we did actually manage to get in there and do it at that particular time. And a recent music DVD of ours, which came out at the end of last year, which was the Live at Madison Square Gardens 1978 satellite broadcast performance, I actually thought it was only going to sell maybe 10,000 copies, but in fact it sold about 30,000 copies, which is a lot better than I thought it would do. And that's a pretty respectable figure for these days.
That's impressive in this market, in this climate. I like the interviews in between the songs. People don't do that enough. So you get to talk.
Well, people who do interviews and try and broaden the basis. Just I suppose if you get a movie on DVD, then you'll find all the outtakes and the interviews with the stars and all the other things that are the added value aspect of trying to be competitive. And when we did the Living with the Past DVD, which sold about 100,000 copies, it was kind of early days, and I paid for it and produced it, and I wouldn't do that today because to try and do. So it is arguably cheaper to produce a DVD today. I mean, the cost of cameras and crews and things has actually come down because it is such a competitive environment, which has driven the actual production cost down a bit. But the sales, on the other hand, you'd be lucky if you break even doing a DVD these days, and those that we have tend to be things that are in the can. Either it's a live performance that perhaps has been for television, and so it's kind of ready-made. The DVD comes with the package, so to speak. It's just someone hits record in a back room as it's being broadcast, basically. So that way, it's kind of easy. But no, I wouldn't produce, pay for, and initiate a DVD. I don't think in this day and age I would be a lot of work for very precious little in the way of income. I'd be lucky to break even, I think.
I'm looking at Polestar right now in the upcoming tour, and it's got you in Greece, Israel, Ontario, Norway, and America. It's quite a spread.
Yeah, well, it is, and we head off. Now we just come back from touring in Scandinavia and Germany and Italy, and we're USA next for the month of June, and then July we're back in Europe playing a whole bunch of places from again up to Norway and down as you rightly point out as far as Greece and various points in between, and later on, of course, we go and yet again to Israel, where I am strangely drawn to Israel with all of its complexities and difficult issues and the feelings I think that you have when you visit there and perform in concert. There's an awful lot of soul searching and scratching of heads that goes on as to whether or not we really should be there doing what we do. But I've always tried to keep politics and personal beliefs away from the idea of performing music to people, because that is the one thing I can always feel reassured about, is that you get people together in a room or in a space, and in this case it's an ancient amphitheater on the shore of the Mediterranean, and it is, you suspend for a while all of those issues, and you bring people together in a way which is uniting on a nicer and higher plane, I think, than some of the levels in which you can find yourself getting quite upset in certain parts of the country or certain parts of the world that I visit. There are lots of times you just have to try and blank it out and get on with the job of that mutual exchange which performance is, and try and keep your minds off the politics, the geopolitics, and all the things that go with it.
And two questions on that. Are the audiences, say, in Israel, Germany, Greece, do they pick up on different albums than, say, we in America? Do you feel them?
Well, there is a certain shift of influence, I think, with certain records that have had more impact. I mean, the album Broadsword was a very successful one in Germany, for example, but not so in the USA. But there are albums that are pretty universal, like Aqualung and I guess Stand Up's pretty well known, although in retrospect people probably bought that after they bought Aqualung and Thick as a Brick and others. So yeah, I think there's certain common ground where you can feel reasonably assured that certain repertoire works in all places. But perhaps the biggest reassurance comes from playing new music which is not on record anywhere, and playing that to an audience is always a real test of the music and a test of perception from different people in different places. And so if you introduce some new material that people can't have heard before, and it meets with approval right across a broad swathe of countries and languages and cultural differences, then you can feel pretty good about that as a performer, because you think, right, I've come up with a piece of music here which is passing the ultimate test of making a fairly instant impression on people on first listening, and that's always quite gratifying to do.
So I would imagine you have the newer material that hasn't been recorded yet. In all the concerts, do you shift the concerts from one country to another? Do you shift the set list?
We certainly do move things around a little bit as we go along, and it will also depend on perhaps where we last played, or when we last played in a particular city. We go back and look at the set list, and if we find there are too many things that are the same from a previous occasion, then we would try to change that, so that we try to make successive shows between 50 and 80% different to the last time we played there. But sooner or later you get caught out, because of course we don't just play the same things in the same places in the same rotation every 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever it might be. So you do have to be a little bit taking that little bit of care to make sure that you're not repeating yourself. But luckily, of course, these days with laptop computers and so on, we can carry all that information, all that data travels with us, so we can always look up set lists to see what we played 10 years ago in your town, and try and make sure that we do something different.
I would love to see selections from different concerts all around the world. Do you have enough footage that, say, the camera's running every night, or just different nights?
No, we don't do video recording of our concerts at all. We leave that up to half the audience with their horrible little cell phones. I notice with some relief a theatre that I'm playing in the fall of this year in the USA on a solo tour, that the theatre posted on its website a whole list of advisories to audiences, which were zero tolerance about underage consumption of alcohol, forbidden use of cell phones, forbidden use of cameras, forbidden use to sit and talk to your neighbor in the theater during the performance, all sorts of things which sounded quite draconian, but I mean, to me, are just perfectly common sense and courtesy. If you're going to watch a music concert, then if you're at some head-banging heavy metal kind of concert, well, I can understand there's a different kind of behavior, but if you're watching music which is, should we say, more thinking man's pop or rock music, then it's nice not to irritate your neighbors by using cell phones and flashing cameras, or talking loudly to people around you. And they seem to me very common sense things that most people would understand intuitively and not have to be warned off doing by a theatre's website. But those are the kind of issues I guess we face these days, that sometimes the culture is so different in different cities, even within the same country. And we noticed that in the UK. If you're playing in Newcastle on a Saturday night, it's going to be a little different to be playing in some suburb of London on a Monday night. And people just do behave differently in different places, and you have to accept that up to a point, and then you start cursing. But
and
hopefully not with the microphone on.
Even the fans seem to have a debate over their right to be able to tape the music because they paid for a ticket and they want to post it on YouTube, and they don't seem to have any regard for copyright.
No, well, they don't, and a lot of people think that's quite harmless, just to, hold up their new super-duper cell phone or some little digital camera and record 3 or 4 minutes of audio and video and put it on YouTube. Those people get a big kick out of doing that, and it may seem harmless enough, but I'm instinctively, I'm afraid, I don't approve of taping in that environment. Apart from anything else, I think it's right. It can be very intrusive to the people around you to know that someone is holding up their phone and to over the heads of the audience to record something, or quite often what people do is they make a call on their cell phone and then hold the phone up to the towards the stage in order that the person on the other end can hear where they are. It's rather like that excruciatingly loud voice you hear if you're traveling on a public train service here from somebody saying, "Hello, it's me. I'm on the train." I find all that really quite annoying. Yes, I'm a sensitive and sometimes unhappy cell phone user myself, because I do feel quite conspicuous if I'm using a phone in a public place. I hate to annoy people, and I hope that they will also try to avoid annoying me by using their cell phones and talking very loudly or waving them around in my face. So yeah, I'm not really one for. I certainly don't approve of people doing that. I think if you can't actually remember a concert, if you're so busy recording it or taking photographs with your new camera and you haven't even figured out how to turn the flash off, then you're probably going to be not exactly paying attention to what's going on from the stage. And I rather think that you're there to enjoy an experience, and if you're paying attention, you should remember it. You don't have to record it. Goodness me.
Well, I know you're a busy man. I'd talk to you for 3 or 4 hours if I could. But my final question: Bank of America Pavilion, June 15th. You're playing with Procol Harum, which I think is a marvelous pairing. Any surprises for us?
Well, the surprises are, I think, fundamentally, in order of importance, that Gary Brooker is still alive. Second most important thing, I'm still alive, because we are old men. Gary's actually slightly older than me, and he's in very good shape as a performer. Surprisingly, he's for a certain amount of self-abuse over the years. He's actually still really a great singer, and I've worked with Gary a couple of times in recent years, and even accompanied him on the flute on a TV show in Germany where we did Whiter Shade of Pale, which is always one of my. I'm not really a big fan of other people's music most of the time, because I just find I do so much music myself. It's about all I can cope with. But there's certain classic songs that I do think are really quite wonderful, and I've always had the ambition to play flute on A Whiter Shade of Pale, and if I should be asked, then Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. So there's some really good tunes out there that just feel they're kind of right for a little flute addition or intrusion, depending on your point of view. But yes, I'm looking forward to seeing Procol Harum again. I haven't played with, well, they've done tours with us in the past, but not for about 15 years or so. So it'll be interesting to see. Pretty much the same band as last time, strangely enough. But Gary's the only man from the original band, but then he's the singer and the main man anyway. So we should be grateful he's still alive and kicking and up there to do it again. And I, for one, shall be listening to their set most nights and hopefully enjoying it.
Ian, your music means a lot to me. It's been an honor to speak with you, and I hope you go on the lecture circuit.
Well, that would be that would be an interesting option if I could find any availabilities. But I guess Tony Blair's probably taken up all the theatres and all the schedules for some time to come. He's apparently told his friends he needs to make at least £5 million, about $7.5 million each year to pay for his staff and his houses and all the rest of it. And so he's busy out there trading on being an ex-prime minister, albeit a very unpopular one, and I suppose in the USA being George Bush's faithful buddy. But yeah, Tony Blair is one of those characters. He's not a bad man, any more than George Bush was a bad man. In fact, I always rather liked George Bush in a funny kind of way. I think he always thought he had a good sense of humor. And but Tony Blair's an odd guy. So yeah, the lecture circuit, it just conjures up someone cashing in, doing something by trying to sound rather grand and important. So I'm afraid it's unlikely I would do it. I think I'd probably stick to playing music and talking only when asked on interviews such as this. But very nice to talk to you. Looking forward to being in Boston again, and keep my clam chowder warm for me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ian Anderson.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye now.